for real. Hi, welcome to Ask the Manager. We're here in the studio and hanging in there. So the selectmen have been pretty busy this fall with all sorts of happenings. And did they set the tax rate?
At the meeting on November 9th, the tax rate will be set, so it's just coming up pretty soon. Yep.
So I'm trying to jump the gun there.
Yeah.
What's your prediction? You think we're going up, or will we level off?
The tax rate will definitely be going up because of the override and the additional debt service that came on for the police station this year. But it's with some of the changes that I'm sure we'll get into at special town meeting, it won't be going up as high. The other balancing factor on the tax rate itself, which doesn't change the tax bill, is the property values have gone up so much over the last year. So, property value times the rate gives us the levy, and the levy is set. So those two have a offsetting impact on each other, and the values really have gone up.
And we want the value on our houses, and we think it's great until our tax bill comes.
That's true.
So that's a hot topic with a lot of people as far as, how their taxes are going to be impacted. And there's still a lot of questions about the 1%. People are now realizing, what's this 1%? They might not have, listened before. So there's a lot of adjustments around that. I also think it's a time to be very careful as far as adjusting permits and different charges that come along the way, because people are feeling like they're getting hit in every direction. But the one issue that I see when it comes up on the TV is that the handicap parking, a violation is $100. That was set in the 80s when $100 sounded like a lot of money. How is the handicap parking today? Are there a lot of violations around handicap parking, or is the $100 still effective enough, or does that need to go up?
The town has the ability to raise it up to $300 under the state laws. We haven't adopted that additional section, but we don't get a lot of complaints. I don't have I'm not aware of the data with exactly the parking tickets for handicap spaces, but we don't get a lot of complaints of people misusing those spaces. But we do have that option again to take it up to $300, and then we actually, if we make that change as well, we can dedicate some of that revenue into the Commission on Disabilities and or parking ticket enforcement, mainly for handicap enforcement. So something we really haven't taken on yet.
I was in a store in town, and someone had parked, actually it wasn't in town, it was in Westboro, but someone had parked in the fire lane. And the person was offended that the police officer wrote him a ticket. And all I overheard was the police officer saying, "I don't give them a ticket right away, but that car's been there. They're in here shopping somewhere. They're not, they didn't just run in and grab something and run out." And so people are insulted that they would get a ticket for something that they should know that they shouldn't do. And I think one of the real terrible violations is to park in a handicap parking space. If you don't need it, make sure you leave that open for someone who does. And it must be on my mind a lot, because I had nightmares that I parked in a handicap parking spot and didn't want to get the ticket. So it must be really on my mind, or I'm seeing it a lot on the flip when it comes up on the town site on TV. We had special town meeting on the 18th of October, and it seemed like it was going to be an insignificant meeting, but yet when we dove into the articles, which there were 16, I was impressed with the accomplishments in such a short period of time, and it amazed me that we were out of there in less than an hour on top of that. And I do credit that for a few things. You know, we have different town meeting members now, but at the same time, the information is available where we can watch it when it's convenient for us, and we can get all the information on each article, and it's supplied by the town. Have you had any feedback about that?
Only positive feedback on both the length of the special town meeting and the video and the materials. Although I guess I have to say, since now that I'm thinking of it, we did experience some significant mail delays. Some town meeting, we mailed packets out Friday the week before town meeting. So there was a whole week, 7 days, well, more than 7 days, 10 days between the mailing and special town meeting. Unfortunately, some town meeting members didn't get their packets until after town meeting. Okay. And it's not neighborhood based, it's not street based, because we know, someone got it and someone else didn't get it within very close proximity. So that's frustrating. I think that's, we do post all those materials online on the town meeting pages when we mail them out. So I think it's just in the future even more critical that we continue to do that and provide the video overview that we do, which was only about an hour, but I thought it was worth it again to do that, have department heads or key stakeholders in to review the materials in advance. So.
And we're accustomed to, you put something in the mail in town at the post office and you get it the next day. Mm-hmm. So there is some sort of a glitch to think that it took that long and people didn't get the information in time. What was the time frame for putting the information online?
It went out. It was online that same morning that we put it in the mail. So individuals would have had about 13 days to read it. In between
the Major League Baseball playoffs.
Well, yeah.
They could watch it in between innings and
exactly.
Stuff. Exactly. So there was a change to the insurance. Now we have an insurance trust fund that's being established, and discontinuing the workers' compensation. This is going to be more efficient and better for financial planning for the town.
Right. Hopefully more stability. Everyone knows most automobile policies and homeowners policies have varying deductibles, and the town has varying deductibles on our lines. Ours are just, as an institution, a lot higher, like our injured on duty is $45,000 a year. So it really provides us two things. One, if we don't incur those every year, then we don't have to budget for them, because it's kind of in that separate side account trust fund that we can draw upon in the future. But also the way those deductibles work is there's like a 2-year run out period. So we get to the end of the fiscal year, we may have only spent $5,000 on a deductible, but if an officer was injured and has ongoing medical needs or procedures, then we have much more flexibility beyond the end of the fiscal year to continue to cover that deductible from the prior fiscal year. So it does provide us those two benefits.
And we now have planning for a water enterprise fund?
We added money to the stabilization fund for water, yes.
So It's designated for water, it's designated for sewer?
Correct.
Now, the value to that is that it's good for planning.
Correct, yep.
How does that impact the taxpayer?
Well, the ratepayer more, right? So the water customer or the sewer customer, it allows us, kind of like the stabilization fund that we established for the override, it allows us to hold funds in reserve for these major capital improvement projects, both on a proactive basis. We can set funds aside for a year or two and then take on a $2 million water or sewer project. And then, it also allows us to handle very promptly emergencies that may arise. Although it is true we'd have to come back to town meeting, we have those funds on hand and we can quickly access them.
There were three, wasn't it? The water, the sewer, and was there a third one? Or am I?
We did some transfers with regards to the Uber and Lyft funding as well.
No, it was the town sewer system special purpose.
Oh, yeah, so we established that
stabilization.
account, right. We established that account at this meeting as well.
So basically, it's the same money, but in a more thoughtful and organized and planned fashion, that the money's there
Yes,
for
yeah.
when we need it.
It's actually a little bit more formal as well, because in the past, we used to set funds aside and put it into something called like a general construction fund, and technically the, town staff would just be able to use that because it was appropriated funds, but now we have to come back and with more details to town meeting and get their approval for the use of the funds if we're going to draw from those accounts.
And then the sale of the Allen property, which is Centec North, it was a little bit like home. You got the money in your hand and poof, it went off to something right away.
That is true.
And so the Toblin Hill Bridge, which has needed repair, all of that will be redone
Yes.
with that funding. So we won't be impacted by it. We don't get to enjoy the profits for 5 minutes, but the money will go to something so that we're not negatively impacted
That's correct.
with the project.
Right, so, the Toblin Hill Bridge reconstruction estimate is $1.3 million, and then unfortunately, the retaining walls along Nursery Drive are also showing signs of structural degrade, and we just want to take care of all of it at one time while we do have those funds. So the other part of this is, that $1.3 million is, as you know, like 75% of our any annual capital improvement plan. So using these funds also allows us to continue to have a more normal capital improvement plan and continue to invest in other pieces of equipment and other projects without kind of just saying, okay, this year we've got to only do the bridge.
So how old was the bridge and how old are these retaining walls? Because I didn't, of course, time flies. Nursery Drive to me is no more than about 50 years old.
Oh yeah, it's not that old at all. I don't even know if it's 50 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about 30 years old.
So why?
Unfortunately, it was poor design that wasn't known until well after the town accepted that roadway. We pursued the designer and the contractors legally, but either we were beyond our ability to do so one way or another, whether they were out of business or just from a timing factor. So,
Well, that's unfortunate, but it seems that it's more of all of the construction, the nature of the construction back in the 80s and in that time frame, give or take a few years. We continue to fix what should have been done in a better way at the time. Will people be saying this stuff about us 30 years from now?
I hope not.
I'm going to put your name on it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we do feel our name goes on those things. So,
Right.
I mean, some of the work that's going on in town, like the 290, the bridge at 140 bridge over 290. Now those are much older structures, but the
290 bridge over.
the
Now,
140 bridge over
the 140
290.
bridge over 290.
Yep.
290 was built when I was in high school. So that was built a little more than 50 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even that seems.
Yeah. I mean,
Think of all the old buildings, the old bridges, and that just seems like.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Or?
No, Mass DOT identified, structural deficiencies, not deficiencies, but degradation in the steel superstructure. A lot of salt, calcium chloride, the things that we do to the roads in the winter
right.
keeps it black, and keeps the roads black, and
Yeah.
everyone likes it, but it does have
So-
impacts, and we've gotten more aggressive with those type of chemicals and treatments over the years. So these new materials that we're installing are prepared for today's chemicals, but are we going to get harsher? That's a good question.
Hopefully we'll at least get 50 more years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the transportation network companies, which would be like Uber and Lyft.
Right.
We never thought about I never thought about the benefit to the town in that small tax. So we got over $18,000 from 1 year.
2 years.
2 years.
Yes.
So that was like an added, I mean, did you plan on it?
No,
Or had you thought
never,
about it?
Yeah, we never plan on it. I'm still surprised. That means we had 183,000 rides that originated in Shrewsbury over 24 months. It's a lot of rides. So it's beneficial to us because we're limited in the use to like alternative mobility considerations, crosswalks, sidewalks, and other more creative things. We're deciding on near-term planning for that, but we think we want to do some sidewalk master planning or planning, connecting different segments of roadways that have sidewalks, maybe on two side streets, thinking of our walkability and connectivity to parks. So it is nice to have that, additional revenue stream coming in from the state, really not a burden on the individuals that are riding. It's part of a 20-cent tax package. 10 goes to the state, 10 cents comes to the town. So it's helpful to us.
So we did all right.
Yeah, we did all right. Yep.
And when you talk about traffic and transportation, and if you drive in the commute, you realize people drive at a certain pace. As soon as all the commuters get to work, the roads seem to settle down and people drive at a slower pace. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I hate being behind those cars, to be honest, but the traffic does slow down. Mm-hmm. I always worry about how those cars, people trying to get to work are on a mission. They're trying to get to work, but yet they're going through neighborhoods. They're going through, like I think of like Prospect Street or I always say Harrington Avenue, Mill Road, and we don't have sidewalks there. So do you see that there's a future for sidewalks in those types of streets?
We really do, and hopefully we can use some of our federal stimulus dollars for that as well, if we can tie them to recreation type activities that people really demanded during the pandemic. So yes, I do see an opportunity to do that.
So just walking, is that considered?
It is, especially within that's one of the other things that I've been looking at or thinking about with the projects is Dean Park is a wonderful place to walk, but everyone's walking on the road, right? And we have wooden guardrails, and I've been spending a little bit of time up there just trying to think about projects and looking at the improvements that we have been making. And I hate to see two cars and a mom or a dad in a stroller. Like that's
Right.
too close for comfort for me whenever outside of them is a wooden guardrail. So something that we're considering, can we make walking paths right along the outside, so to speak, of the guardrail?
Right.
So yeah, we are considering a lot of those types of investments.
Good. And once again, Oak Middle School windows. We didn't plan for the windows, which obviously they needed to be done when we did that project too. Mm-hmm. But yet, that's an expensive project. Windows are expensive. Mm-hmm. So the good news is there'll be a vote on October 27th by MSBA, and hopefully we'll get 52% reimbursement. So if we can assume or cross our fingers that we get that reimbursement from MSBA, mm-hmm. what will the cost be for the town?
$500,000.
And it's still $500,000. Yeah. So good luck when you try to replace the windows on your house. If you think of, it won't be that expensive,
right.
But there's a lot of windows in a school, but mm-hmm. that's greatly needed. Yeah. Just to conserve on fuel mm-hmm. and cut down on drafts.
Yep. Yeah, we are really considering or asking. It's hard. It's an internal debate because we have to make these spending decisions with the Rescue Plan Act funds, the second round of stimulus fundings that have come to towns, because we have broad guidance and then we have to show performance measures and how it related to the pandemic. So that's a project that we're looking at for using the ARPA or the American Rescue Plan Act funds to cover as well the town's portion, because a lot of those windows, the mechanical aspects of them have failed, so we can't open them. So just being able to open the windows would have been more beneficial during the pandemic as well.
Open the window with a mask on, it would be helpful for
airflow,
people.
Yep. So bringing fresh air in. So we are trying to say maybe we don't even need to use free cash for our 48%.
Now, is New Beale, is it air conditioned? Is it an air conditioned
100%.
school? Why didn't we do that even 10 years ago? Like, we knew people worked in air conditioning, and we
Yeah.
live in air conditioning now.
Yeah.
We're going to be playing catch up, and that's going to be a major, probably a state reimbursement project to
Yeah.
figure out how to get air conditioning into schools.
Yeah, I mean, our recent new builds, Sherwood, et cetera, we have done the air conditioning, and remember, 10 years is it's really a short time ago. Library is certainly fully air conditioned, but yeah, the high school, which is a 20-year-old building, not air conditioned, but not banging any drums or carrying any line. Things have gotten a lot warmer over the last 20 years.
No,
and
that's true too.
And I mean, you look at temperatures that we've had this fall, it's just unbelievable. I was sitting in my car before I came in here, and we had a snowstorm this week last year. So, and I know it's not, but this year's just been so warm in the fall, and that's really the difference because.
Which it's affected our apples.
Yep.
They're not as sweet this year because.
Yep. But we're in school and leaving school the same months and days,
Right.
mid-June and late August, but it's just warmer enough that we really have to consider. We're having some 90-degree days, and it does get awful warm in some of those schools without climate control. So just to have normal education, we're going to have to make those investments.
Yeah, so that's the future.
Mm-hmm.
So when my 45-year-old son was in grammar school, we fought over all those yuppies want computers in the school, okay? And now we're going to complain because all those yuppies are going to want air conditioning in the school. I think it's just a survival. I mean, I'd be a gorilla if I were a teacher and I started to get warm in the classroom. I just don't even know how you can get the kids to concentrate.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've been, in the upstairs and some, Spring Street and Floral, relatively new.
yeah.
It's pretty warm.
Yeah, and if you're home all day and you don't have your air conditioning on, that's one thing because that's what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people are coming from work and then they're going into an air conditioned house, their children are in air conditioned houses, then they come out of that air conditioned house and go into a school that's so hot.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I feel for the teachers. You've got people with medical conditions. Anyways, then there were 4 articles related to zoning.
Mm-hmm.
They went by pretty smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Lake Street, then the indoor-outdoor dining, and everybody found the indoor-outdoor dining to be successful, and it would be a shame to see that go away because people seem to enjoy being outside. I do believe that it will be nice to have outdoor dining that's regulated now because it can be planned and you don't have to have as you drive in certain places on Route 9, not in Shrewsbury, you see pallets for fences and things like that, where you can go by somewhere else and it's, designated through plantings and flowers, and you can make it pretty at the same time. So I think it's good that will actually have a good impact for the customers as well as the people driving down the street. Then there's the wireless telecommunications towers, which we now have small wireless facility. So that's an improvement actually in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, we're catching up to the federal regulations is the main intent behind updating our bylaws. We can't be contrary to them, and even since I've been in the position over the last 4 years, we've been in federal court because we denied a cell tower on Spring Street, but didn't do so within the confines of the federal laws, so that was allowed to go forward anyhow. So part of that is updating the federal regulations, but the centerpiece of that was how we regulate these smaller towers that will be located maybe on utility poles and maybe in other forms and fashion throughout the community.
And that will actually lead to improvement, easier fixes for the areas in town where there's poor reception.
It could, yeah, absolutely.
So there's the possibility of true benefit to the residents at the same time, not just to the businesses.
Right.
So that's good. Now, the inclusionary zoning bylaw where you added the town center district, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so inclusionary zoning strikes a requirement to have affordable housing at a certain percentage for every market rate unit that's built. So this is for multi-unit. It has no impact on a single-family home that's constructed. But in the multi-family home developments, it requires that 12.5%, at least 12.5% of the units are designated as affordable and restricted as affordable in perpetuity. So this wasn't included in our initial zoning. We didn't add it to that table, so we took advantage of the special town meeting to add that into that section of the bylaw for the town center, and that'll be a requirement going forward.
Now, the 439 Lake Street roadway plan, we were asked to defeat that. That was just a spending issue?
Well, so we had the funding. It was $250,000 to acquire a parcel of land. The intent behind the acquisition was to ultimately straighten the roadway out a little bit, very sharp corner there by SAC Park and just north of Grove Meadow Lane. We heard a lot of comments, feedback, pushback from residents in advance of the finance committee meeting saying, why this road? Why is it prioritized? What's the data? Admittedly, we didn't necessarily have all our ducks in a row on it. Finance committee voted not to support it. The Board of Selectmen is moving forward to have more public feedback and engagement. We'll be going through this major strategic planning project starting at the start of the next calendar year in a couple months. So they just kind of paused the project and said, okay, let's be more strategic about this, both when we ask for it and what resident input we get prior to do it. I smile because towns are limited in how we can acquire property. So normally I can't say, the town manager, the town needs to buy this piece of land, so I'll come to you and I'll buy your house, right? Like, we can't do that. We have to put a broad publication out and say the town needs to buy 1 acre of land somewhere within Shrewsbury to do something on. So then we have to find the cheapest parcel to do that. In this situation, there's a provision within the general laws that allows us to buy a piece of land if it has certain unique factors, and one being near a roadway and acquiring it for roadway purposes. We can have more of a direct transaction. It's called a uniqueness clause. So there's so many factors that go into these decisions. So we know the property is considered or being considered for sale, and we wanted to be more proactive. We didn't want someone else to buy it. We'd miss our opportunity if someone builds a single family home on that lot because there's not enough room to then straighten the roadway because we need to go into that lot. So there's a lot of moving parts and pieces behind the scenes. I realize that residents didn't realize all that, don't know all that, how many factors go into it. But yeah, we were really trying to be opportunistic as that parcel of land went on the market. We could lose the opportunity, but that's where we are.
To lose the opportunity to buy that will be unfortunate because the pedestrians, because we did get notified, there's people walking in that. I happen to travel on that road a lot to get over to Route 20. And the pedestrians are not safe walking on that road. And I always ask myself, why are they walking here? This is so dangerous. And when you take that curve, you have to, even if you're careful, you have to hope that the car coming in the opposite direction is careful. And so it is dangerous. So it will be unfortunate if we miss that opportunity totally. Because I think it's an opportunity to even extend the sidewalk, because there is a sidewalk to a certain point over there, just to keep the people safe, because they're going to get hurt.
Right, and yeah, if we can extend the sidewalks on Lake Street, then it goes back into the Poets up there. That all those neighborhoods have sidewalks in it, so it does bring greater connectivity. We should have did a better job planning, selling, but we were reactionary with that unique opportunity. So we'll see what happens.
Then there was the typical, we're partway through the fiscal year, time to, if I put these positions in place now, it's not a full year in the budget, and then we work it into the budget. So HR coordinator, you already have one.
Yep.
You've learned that you really need more than one because there's so much complexity to what HR does.
Yes.
They probably did it all along, but now today it's done with more intensity.
Absolutely.
And with more eyes on it. So that was a sensible plan. And you're doing it with not a full year's worth of
Correct.
payment. Do you have candidates for that?
Not yet. So the position will be posted, actually be before the middle of next week. So before the last week in October, and we're seeking a broad and diverse pool of candidates, for consideration. It will be an entry-level human resources position. We'll kind of start building out the HR function and, create an HR director's position. So it'll still be within the office of the town manager. Within the Town Manager Act, I have the title of Personnel Director, or the responsibility of that. So none of that's going to change. But, right now, the HR coordinator picked up all those tasks that were being done dispersed throughout the organization. So we made some improvements. But, of course, when you do that, when you're servicing 20 departments, it's likely that in any given month we have one or two positions that we're recruiting for, or someone resigned. So really the HR coordinator is moving from position posting to position posting, and only on really slower times are we getting the opportunity to reconsider our policies, thinking about training programs to improve staff and supervisors and things like that. So that's the next step. So moving from task-based to more proactive planning.
So how many departments do you have now?
In total, there still are 15 departments.
Of those 15 departments, how many of those departments have written policies?
It really depends on a department by department basis. The police and fire have their own policies really strict, and then some of our smaller departments may never need policies or just don't have them at this point. So we finally, it is an accomplishment of the current HR coordinator, we finally have a general employee handbook that consolidates all of our policies, introduces new policies. Since COVID started, the HR coordinator has been responsible for, helping us implement those things. And we're on A and B teams, and she's still responsible for tracking COVID-related exposures at work and people that are symptomatic that don't come in, and when are they tested? When do we allow them back? It's a big scope of work whenever the playing field are, 250 other employees. 'Cause that's
So
where we're at.
if I hear you correctly, a large portion of your departments fall under the same umbrella of policies.
Absolutely.
Anyhow.
Yes.
And then you have your unionized ones. But that unionized, that doesn't mean that they have to have separate policies.
Correct, yeah.
That just means you follow the guidelines.
Right.
Where something like police and fire, they need to have structure with policies based on the type of work that they do. What I'm hearing, not that I'm trying to create more positions, but and the pandemic is a unique situation, but is that a situation where it's appropriate for HR to be making those decisions, or should it be a medical person?
Well, so it's indirect consultation with public health, right? So, but she is, Christina Ordung is our staff member that is, facing the
She's
individual
designated.
Employees, yep,
Right.
and then consulting with a public health nurse or telling the employee to call the public health nurse. But, there for a while, we were issuing guidance monthly. We're going to be 100, in the office 50% of the time. We're going to be in the office less than 50% of the time. We're going to be, okay, now we're all back, and you have to wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask. The, public's allowed. That all goes through the HR coordinator because it touches every employee.
So that was a major added burden to when the HR coordinator is trying to accomplish what HR really needs to be doing.
Right.
And so this person, it would be like an assistant coordinator or whatever title.
No, it'll be HR coordinator will be the title, but then we're going to create the title of HR director.
Right.
Yes.
For the other person.
For the other. Yep.
Even though, what do you then, like the HR VP?
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
They still work for you.
they still work right for
The
my
director
office.
still
Yep,
works for you.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so when do you think that will happen?
We have 7 months of funding for the second HR position this year, so it could be as soon as December 1st. And then we would be looking to make HR director promotions, upgrades to that position, probably around May or June of this year, towards the end of the fiscal year.
So is it sensible to hire someone to start December 1st or wait till after the new year?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, we're trying to put ourselves in a position that the position, someone will start no later than January 1st. We always get into this time of year. We have it advertised for 2 or 3 weeks to conduct interviews.
Well, I'm
We're
just
going to have
thinking,
holidays in there.
you're going to be paying a brand-new employee all those holidays.
Yeah,
They're not even going to be working full
Right.
weeks. You're better off probably wait,
Right.
since you're that close.
Yeah, it's likely to happen. Yeah.
Except the HR person probably wishes they had the person yesterday, so I understand that too. There is a sense of urgency around that. And then you're elevating the town planner to a department head.
Correct. Creating the first real standalone planning department. When Kristen last started as the town's first planner, it was a position within the engineering department. And then when she became the assistant town manager, we had a part-time assistant planner who then became full-time planner in July of 2017, and we added a part-time position, and now we have 2 full-time positions, so we're actually bringing on another position, so there'll be 3, and that'll constitute a full department along with an administrative assistant that supports them part-time.
So when you say 3, who are the 3?
So 1 is vacant. 1 will be Bernie Cahill, who'll be the planning director, and then the current assistant town planner, who's Rowan McAllister, who's been with us since June.
So when you think of Kristen taking the assistant town manager position and straddling the town planning work, getting Bernie on board, she must feel a real sense of relief now because he's really got his feet dug into the department, and he, clearly is more experienced at how it relates to the planning job relates to Shrewsbury. So that's actually good for Kristen so that she has time to do her work. So there's a ripple effect to everything that you're describing.
Yep.
And none of what you're describing, and I'm saying this, I know it, none of what you're describing is anything that you planned this. This is well thought out and well planned, and you're implementing in segments.
We're implementing the plan that was put in place in the winter of 2018, right after I started, actually maybe the spring of 2018, April of 2018, after organizational assessment was conducted. Now, the centerpiece of that was DPW, but all these other pieces, the second assistant town manager, we're doing this all clockwork, and we revisit that plan. Not enough, but it's fun to go back and say, yep, check this box, yep, check this box. So 20 years from now or 30 years from now, we'll look back and say it was a nice slow roll out of the planning department, probably later than it should have happened, but we still did it very systematically. And that's really, the plan, because, it's not like, Kristen's responsibilities accelerated before we've been able to backfill with the town planning department, because, even still today, really until November 1st, she's still the department head, so oversees all administrative and mission-related duties for planning, with the support of, the rest of the staff that are there. But she's also has the responsibility for all community development and health and human services functions. So she has the Council on Aging director, quasi the library director, the public health department, recreation, all those planning, building, they all report to her, through her, for their day-to-day responsibilities. So those department heads are her direct reports. So
Now, these new hires aren't costing us money in the budget this year?
partial funding. Yep.
By taxation?
By taxation. Yep. No other associated expenses are, though, because we're using outside funding. Yep.
So, what's your, the town has grown.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, I understand why it needs to be done. But what would be your response to someone thinking you're creating all these positions and they're all costing us an awful lot of money? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so I think that with regards to planning and human resources, Don, I remember sitting, at this table, and for the first few months, rightfully so, you asked me, what surprised you the most about Shrewsbury, Kevin? Now, being here over 4 years, it's the lack of human resources and planning functions in this town. So, everything that I know in my head of potential additional housing unit growth, some that is very evident, like Edgemere, we're still sitting on right now, there's a pipeline of over 400 housing units that don't have a certificate of occupancy, and that means maybe the building's built and they don't have a certificate of occupancy, like Edgemere, or as of yesterday, we met with the future developer, the person that's buying out, or the company that's buying out the point at Hills Farms. So there's a lot of growth and development, and we need to make sure that we're doing that right. So that's planning, right? We got lucky in some ways. We're catching up in some ways with all this growth in the community. It's not going to stop. We can all think that, we've made it to 38,000. We used to be 20 and we're there. It's not going to stop. Maybe once we get over 50 and then someone will watch this and laugh at me, but we're going to continue to grow. We're seeing that, right? We've talked about in the years, smaller single family homes being torn down for duplexes and things like that. Those things, will continue. And we're building a greater sense of place in the town center, so we're reinvesting in ourselves. All those things take planning and affordable housing trust, community preservation. Those are all planning functions. The community clearly spoke, right? They said community preservation is something that we want to do. That falls through the planning. So there's another high-tier board through the CPC, Community Preservation Commission, that's about to be established that we need to be able to staff. They'll have the opportunity to spend over $1 million a year, and we need to put them in a good position to do so. Human resources, kind of that's the biggest surprise. We have 250 employees, right? And then if you think about adding Selco on that, which, they now have a HR generalist position as well, but 300 employees with no HR function. So anytime a grievance came up, whether that's a formal grievance from a union or a concern of an employee, they would have to go to the town manager. In some ways, that's not organizationally correct. That's too much of an ask to ask a lot of employees to go into the town manager's office and say, hey, this happened to me. That happens through HR. On the negative side of things, the assistant town manager, whenever I got there, was responsible for posting job ads, receiving and reviewing resumes, all these tasks. And we now have someone with a degree, with a concentration in human resources, to make sure we're managing, the federal regulations, Fair Labor Standards Act, Equal Employment Opportunity, other discriminatory, non-discriminatory. We have an HR specialist sitting in all of our interviews, and not kind of a department head that gets to do it once every 5 years asking the questions. It's all part of the maturation of the organization.
And so what you're telling us is that we were a big town functioning like a small potatoes town.
Absolutely.
And now we're catching up to where we should be based on where this town is at.
Yep. And our commitment to the community is that we will be more engaged with you, and we will make those enhancements and improvements to help improve your quality of life. And we're going to get the opportunity to focus on that versus just managing the systems that are already in place.
So that was good.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to see because I'm realizing what we have left for time. So at the same time, there was long-term debt principal, interest, related to Centec North, related to Sherwood. All of that came at a good time.
Yep, all went away. Yep.
Came at a good time. We're getting a Jersey Mike's in town.
We are. Yep, where Be Good was, down in White City Plaza.
So an empty storefront is being filled.
Yep.
And we've had several empty storefronts fill up recently. I was shocked that Papa Gino's went away, but you got to make a good pizza if you want to stay in town.
And you know, the interesting thing I'm starting to hear from developers and those in the development community is that retail is on a bit of a rebound. Bricks and mortar retail's on. Now, that's not prevalent everywhere, so we still see like Bob's vacancy and things like that, but more interest in brick and mortar retail. So maybe it, you know, we went too far to online and now we're coming back a little bit.
Well, it's not just that. You got to, if you go into a brick and mortar retail, you want to see product, and they're suffering just like the grocery stores are suffering as far as supply. I mean, I've gone into some stores lately and thought, you know what, the junk in my closet's better than what you have on the rack. And I come out and my husband's happy I didn't spend money, but you know, that can be frustrating too. So hopefully the supply and demand will balance out at some point. Now, lots of activity at the police station with the construction, and that's very exciting. Now, I happen to be on the committee, and I keep, you know, sounding like I want to spend a lot of money, but I want to make sure that we do it right, because I don't want us to like look at something that we thought we should cut a corner on today, and then, you know, 10 years from now someone's scratching their head saying, what idiot took that, why isn't that in the project, why wasn't that done the right way? So while we try to make sure we, you know, spend in a smart way, we don't want to save in a stupid way, because I think that's what I see happened a lot in the 80s with the construction. What would you like to comment about what's happening with the construction at this point?
Well, my car gets dirty in the parking lot every day.
I bet.
There's just a lot
You
of
haven't parked on the other side yet?
There's a lot of activity that is going on. You know, the footers are in for the foundation. First of all, I mean, there's, you know, all the subsurface work is pretty much done, and duct banks were put in for utilities, foundations. There's, you know, cement trucks there on a daily basis, and the big crane pumping trucks to move that cement around. So we're starting to come up out of the ground at this point, and you know, structural steel will start to arrive at the site for the winter. That's good winter work, just like we did with Beale. So you know, it's a lot of progress. I'm seeing anecdotally 20 or 30 private personal vehicles on that site every day. So, you know, there's a lot of workers there. There's a lot of activity, you know, all the rebar and that kind of stuff that we won't see in the future, but is critical to the success of the project, and the building is all in there. There's a couple pictures, drone images and footage that you can view on the town website, and, you know, various other aspects of social media, and it's quite astounding to see a, you know, view from 60 or 50 feet above, because it's a great addition to the campus there.
Are there any problems with the construction, or is it, other than the dust, is it pretty separate from, it appears to be separate, but is it separate from
100%, yeah. No,
the operation at Town Hall?
Yeah, I mean, it's self-sufficient. You know, it's a separate lot, so to speak, right now. No impact on the Town Hall or even the existing police station. It's actually fenced. You can't walk over there. You know, you can't get there from the Town Hall. So, yeah, it's completely separate in that standpoint, and then it'll get nicely integrated in the end. One
good thing about this project, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened on other projects, but I do see that the police chief involves his staff in the planning from the police department's perspective. Everybody comes to the table with their own perception, but he's not just bringing his perception, he's bringing his department's perception because he's involved his staff. I think that's a really good trait.
Yeah, it's critical for the folks that are going to, quote, live and work in that building, whether that's a dispatcher, detective that will be, what do they need to properly have access to evidence and quiet time and things like that to do their work. And,
which is unheard of in the building they're in.
Oh, there's no quiet or individual spaces, no.
I think when it's done, when the building's done, it's going to be massive, but it's going to show us how long we were outdated with the one that we've had them living in for so long, when they see what we had to do to bring it up to the standard it should be at. People have been working on top of each other, storage, just everything about it, meeting the codes and the expectations and requirements for prisoners, and I think people will be really happy with it when it's done. So a lot of work going in there. The chief talked about traffic enforcement and, recognizing and acknowledging that a lot of people have issues with the way traffic is, whether it's the volume of traffic or the speed of traffic. And he has ideas as to how to make those improvements. Do you want to make any comments on that?
Yeah, I think the centerpiece of what he thinks he needs from a staffing standpoint, which I support, is the creation of a traffic division. And our shifts run now anywhere from 4 to 6, 8 officers on at any given time. 330 lane miles of road in Shrewsbury, so we can't be everywhere at one time. And we don't even have the consistency. That's what a traffic division brings. It brings consistency, it brings expertise. It allows us to put dedicated resource in those communities where people are seeing extra volume and extra speed for a dedicated amount of time, because we can't happen to go there for 2 hours one day and feel like we're going to help solve a problem. And we don't even really have time to, say, let me come out to your house and kind of sit on the porch with you, honestly, and observe traffic as you observe it. That's important. We heard that in other venues recently with the Board of Selectmen. We don't have a department that's built under that community-oriented model, and that's the direction that we want to move into.
And talking about a traffic advisory committee, why do you need an advisory committee? Why can't you just deal with the traffic?
Yeah, the approach would be internal. Well, it's kind of bringing all the right players together. So whether you do that formally or informally, I would argue we do it formally right now between DPW and the police department. I think the one benefit would be a set meeting time every week or every month to gather complaints and problems and improvements over the past month and set the course for the next month. I think that's the argument for it, but I think it's more important to have those staff out there first from a traffic division.
The traffic division.
Yeah.
And cars don't stop at red lights anymore. They think, oh, I can go through that. If you stop at an intersection, you have to be sure that all the cars going the other way have stopped, because they're not going to stop just because the light is red, because your light's green, but they're still going through. It's a crazy world, so something will need to be done to keep people safe. And then he talked about an electronic citation system.
Yeah, so that's kind of a technology-based efficiency within the cruisers that would help with their daily reports, their citations, if they have to issue any of them. It'd be like giving you a receipt as a ticket versus sitting down. We're using carbon copy.
Isn't that surprising?
Yeah.
That's not in place already?
Yeah, and the technology is on your driver's license, that the officer doesn't have to sit in his cruiser and, write out your first name and last name. That's what we do right now. But, we can stick the license in there, gather the data.
Stick the license in there and good luck to you.
Yeah. And then pull it back out. Yeah.
And then he talked about hiring a mental health clinician.
Yep.
But the one thing he did say was a trained mental health clinician, which is different than a mental health clinician in a hospital.
Yep. Yeah, we're actually looking to partner with advocates and receive a grant actually to cover that funding, even though we had it in the budget. So we'll get to, reuse those resources, hopefully for 3 years, and work with an organization who specializes in social workers and mental health workers in law enforcement. So we'll get a system and a structure rather than, again,
Because you
going
want
through an
that,
interview process
Right.
and say, we think this person would be really good.
but you want them qualified and safe if they're going to be out in
Absolutely.
the mix like that. Because in a hospital, you have a problem with someone, you may call the police department to come help you.
Right.
Here, you're gonna have the mental health clinician helping the police department.
Right.
So, it will be interesting to see and hopefully be successful. The other thing the chief talked about was all the different types of officer training that takes place. Has that always gone on? To some degree it has.
To some degree it has, but the chief has renewed commitment to that, and there's just more need and opportunity to make sure that our officers are able to handle all the modern challenges that they face when they're out and about in the world.
But somebody has to pay for the training.
Yeah.
I mean, because the police department, like all the rest of the town departments, oftentimes we're cutting back on funding, so you can't do out-of-state travel, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's not to anyone's fault that there wasn't more training
Absolutely.
before. It was that they didn't have the funding to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it now comes through grants, too.
Yeah, we utilize a lot of grants for officer training and dispatcher training, but some of the unique programs that we want to take and be more proactive in how we police, we need to fund those on our own.
And he talked about a jail diversion program.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, there's so many initiatives that, are part of that 21st century policing model that
Yeah.
he's moving the department forward with,
Yeah.
and I commend him for giving his officers the opportunity to help lead the department in that direction.
now we have less than 2 minutes left, and we're running out of time, and I still have questions, but COVID-19,
Yeah.
how are our numbers?
In a broad brushstroke, over the last 6 weeks, they're marginally improved. We are seeing a decline in the case count per 100,000. Positivity is still just above 2% in
Still
any
too
given
many.
week. Yeah, still
Still
too
too
many.
many
We
in
would still
town.
be yellow under the old system.
Yeah,
If everyone can remember, we're red, green, yellow, gray. We're still yellow.
and there's an indoor mask mandate,
Yes.
and town hall's open.
Town hall's open to the
It's no
public.
longer a fortress, it's open.
Yep. Masks.
And I say that with a tongue-in-cheek because that's what you had to do
Yep.
to keep people safe. So hopefully those numbers will come down because they're still in the double digits, even though
We're seeing
per
some low
week.
days of 1 or 2, on a daily basis, but then still some 10s. So it's hopefully we're seeing that downward trend though.
So we haven't talked about Old Beale, New Beale. Old Beale,
Old Bill, we're working through it. You could expect to see some public hearings early in December with a proposal that I'm growing to like.
you're growing to like.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work and worked with the consultant. It's taken us a while to get somewhere where I think we can come back to the public with it.
Okay. Well, we're out of time. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.